Is it unmuted? Okay, hi everybody. Thank you guys all so much for coming. It's really exciting that we have so much interest in tonight's events. I'm Victoria Alexander. Where's Jacqueline? Come on up here, girl. Okay, great. I'm Victoria Alexander, the chair of Resilient Red Hook and Red Hook resident and business owner. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all tonight to the screening of The Battle for Brooklyn. We are honored to gather here at Pioneer Works, a space that embodies a truly interdisciplinary approach to learning, collaboration, and community building. I want to take a moment to acknowledge my co-planner here at Pioneer Works, Jacqueline Costa, Associate Director and Learn Engage. Jacqueline, your commitment to education is a truly interdisciplinary practice, is at the heart of what Pioneer Works represents, and our work together is a testament to the power of collaboration and community engagement. And thank you for being such an integral part of making this evening possible.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to Pioneer Works. I'm Jacqueline, and really grateful for the opportunity to co-host and present this and really share space with Resilient Red Hook. When she presented this opportunity to us, we realized that it was much more than just an event, but this would be an opportunity for open dialogue, for us to share shared experiences, differing perspectives, and hopefully learn and grow from each other. So I hope you'll continue to grow with us. I hope you'll continue to visit us. And as we strive to create an open and curious and courageous world, and celebrate 20 years for the Battle for Brooklyn.
The Battle for Brooklyn is a story about resilience, about the fight for a community's right to shape its own future, something that deeply resonates with us here in Red Hook as we navigate ongoing development, climate resilience, and the challenges of protecting our working waterfront. This film reminds us that the battle for our neighborhoods is never just about buildings. It's about people, history, and the right to have a say in the place we call home. Before we begin, we'll hear from two people that were on the ground fighting side by side in tandem. Following the film, we are thrilled to welcome the filmmakers, Suki Hawley and Michael Galinsky, for discussion on their work and the impact for Battle for Brooklyn. After that, I will introduce Ron Schiffman, who will lead us in a dynamic panel discussion with some incredible voices who bring expertise, passion, and firsthand experience to the conversation. And finally, after the panel, I will close out the evening with some final thoughts and acknowledgements. I also want to take this moment in advance to thank the Brooklyn Public Library, especially Gretchen, for making sure this event came together. Their support for this event and Pioneer Works for their generous partnership in making this event possible, and Raul Rothblatt for helping us pull this together from Develop, Don't Destroy. Your commitment to fostering meaningful dialogue is invaluable. Before we begin, I'm honored to introduce our first speaker and activist, Patti Hagan. Patti Hagan is an actual grassroots organizer. She was the first to sound the alarm about the Atlantic Yards development and never let up in her fight against it.
Yeah.
There you go, Patti. You got it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. The battle for Brooklyn, like many a war, began by chance. The lead story in the Brooklyn paper of July 28, 2003, about the murder in City Hall of Councilman James E. Davis, Council District 35, had dominated the press for a week. The story just below, quote, Ratner may build Atlantic Terminal Stadium to house New Jersey Nets, was the first hint of new trouble. Alarmed at the thought of adding a big traffic snarling stadium to the already nightmarish intersection of Flatbush and Atlantic, I called Ratner's company. How many blocks? How many acres? I asked. Not to worry, a PR lady assured me. He hasn't netted the nets. I knew Ratner had used eminent domain to wipe out a thriving small business community in downtown Brooklyn to build the soulless Metrotech. I assumed he would be using eminent domain again on Prospect Heights. little 3-year-old Prospect Heights Action Coalition, PHAC, sent out the alarm and began seriously recruiting. Our most important enlistee was the brilliant Jezra Kay, who took FAC into 21st century computer warfare, moving FAC beyond the ancient art of wall painting that the rest of us practiced. We'd been to Lesko. On October 14, Ratner threw a reception at Juniors, inviting a passel of retired NBA players. It was another of his theatrics used to try to buy the New Jersey Nets. He needed a team, however bad, to justify building a stadium. All the sports reporters were there. When the show was over and Ratner came out to get into his limo, he came under surprise FAC ambush. FAC made all the sports pages the next day. Brooklyn Borough President, the height-challenged Marty Markowitz, was a big Ratner fanboy. All he knew about FAC was from the sports pages, so he didn't like us, and he refused to meet with us. Anyway, he was otherwise busy prepping Borough Hall for the December 10, 2003 unveiling of the maquette that Ratner's stadium architect, Frank Gehry, trucked 3,000 miles from California. FAC was not invited, but we were there. Our stunned eyes beheld the 3D miniature maquette, not just a stadium, but 17 skyscrapers up to 60 stories tall, behind it on 22 acres of Prospect Heights, altogether named Atlantic Yards. This monstrosity appeared to be, quote, the village from scratch, close quote, that Gehry had said he always wanted to build. Atlantic Yards was a huge shock to us. No one had ever mentioned skyscrapers. For the first time, it occurred to us that maybe we wouldn't win this one. When a reporter asked Ratner how many people Atlantic Yards would displace, he answered, about 100. His glib answer made me furious. I doubted he had run a count, since he didn't care who or how many lost their homes and businesses. I did my own census. Through Christmas into New Year's, I went door to door. I documented nearly 1,000 people living affordably and working in Ratner's footprint of desire. Among them were a widowed Holocaust survivor, artist Louise Bourgeois, a well-known concert violin maker, a Saul Lewitt printmaking commune, and the frail elderly couple of Victoria and Russell Harmon, living in the same tenement apartment on Pacific Street since 1942. They wrote a heart-rending letter to Mayor Bloomberg asking him to save them from being forced into a nursing home by Ratner. On January 1, 2004, Tish James took her seat in the city council. At a November FAC meeting previously, council member-elect James had declared, quote, I have stood with the Prospect Heights Action Coalition since day one, close quote. She became our leader. Our efforts had also earned the support of legendary Yankees pitcher Jim Bouton, who had become, quote, a stadium scam expert, close quote, while writing Foul Ball and Ball 4. On January 13, James and Bouton drew an overflow crowd into the dark back room of Freddy's, the Dean Street dive that was rapidly becoming rebel headquarters. As well, we had the help of the great civil rights attorney Norman Siegel. He undertook a series of pro bono tutorials on the eminent domain, quote, takings, unquote, people had thought couldn't happen in America. Now the people were worried. They were joining FAC every day in the streets and in Freddy's bar. We kept morale high by drinking beer and painting banners in Freddy's basement. Even though badly daunted by having to fight 17 skyscrapers In addition to the hideous stadium, we drank and painted as well as we could. We were gaining a political presence, appearing everywhere in the news, not just in the sports pages. We had a fit when we discovered the unbuilt Atlantic Yards was listed as crucial to New York City's bid for the 2012 Olympics. The stadium would be the venue for basketball and gymnastics. The skyscrapers would be athletes' dorms, the village. We went into a frenzy, painting banners with messages meant to insult the International Olympic Committee. Quote, Olympics not welcome, close quote. Quote, IOC don't dare, close quote. The banners were gigantic, the letters 4 feet tall. We hung the banners everywhere we could. FACT claimed credit when the IOC dropped New York City as a finalist the next year. It was our only victory. FACT no longer exists outside my archives. DDDB doesn't either, except in this film. In 2004, a Brooklyn historian described the 3 beautiful industrial blocks of Pacific Street she hoped landmarking could save. She wrote, it was along Pacific Street in Prospect Heights that 20th century prosperity in Brooklyn was created. R.I.P. And here is the newspaper that started me on this newspaper.
Big hand of applause for Patti. Thank you so much, Patti. Kicking it off. So, someone that started right next to Patti, and many of us remember her unwavering commitment as a New York City Council member, where she stood with communities fighting for fairness and equity. During the battle over Atlantic Yard, she was a fearless voice, ensuring that local residents were heard and that developments served the needs of the people, not just big interests. Today, as our New York State Attorney General, she continues that fight even today, protecting consumers, holding powerful institutions accountable, and advocating for justice at every turn. Attorney General James, we thank you for your steadfast dedication to the residents and our state. Please join me in welcoming her.
Allow me to introduce the Assembly member who represents this wonderful district, and she certainly is a friend of mine, Assembly Member Marcellus. 20 years ago, there were no Starbucks. 20 years ago, the tallest building in Brooklyn was the Williamsburg Bank Building, and our saying was, don't block the clock. Remember that, Patti? Yeah. 20 years ago, before the development of downtown Brooklyn. 20 years ago, before Hamburger Alley on Flatbush Avenue near the arena. 20 years ago, there was a Freddy's Bar. Woo! And 20 years ago, we stood tall. And Patti, I have to disagree with you. We did win because we went up against a force, a mighty force, and we stood together. And we were ultimately vindicated because that entire project was not built. And we all know that project was focused on one thing and one thing only. And that was a basketball arena for one of the worst teams in the NBA. It's true. They've gotten a little better, but not much. Listen, we're in a society which unfortunately has increasingly become untrustworthy of authority. And the reason why that is because no one sees them. No one hears their concerns, their fears. Increasingly distrustful of government. And in marches, individuals, obviously, authoritarianism, him. Individuals who want to dismantle the experiment known as democracy, want to trample on our liberties and our freedoms. Atlantic Yards was an attempt to basically twist, redefine, they tortured the definition of blighted. Our community wasn't blighted. And they did it just to fit their stated goals. And we fought back. We had to. Because we weren't anti-development. They wanted to characterize us. The narrative was that we were all anti-development, and we were not. We cared about our community. We cared about our neighbors. We cared about the displacement of individuals. Cared about gentrification. We cared about our community. And 20 years ago, this project divided our community along racial lines because there was all this noise about jobs and economic development. And they basically, they lied to a lot of people. And they preyed upon their economic situation and their misery and their struggles. And I'm union to the core because I recognize that unions built the middle class in this country. But a number of unions obviously turned on me. I remember one day there was a demonstration in and around the rail yards, and I remember the construction workers locking me in my car, slamming my car and yelling at me and spitting on my car, and they wouldn't let me out. But just like today, I'm not afraid. And I want all of you to know that this project, as we enter into the next phase, will be impacted by what's happening in Washington, D.C. And so back then, 20 years ago, they put private interest above community interest because there was a crisis, and there continues to be a crisis for affordable housing, truly affordable housing, not what they're building now, but affordable housing for families and for children. And that need still exists now. And so as we enter into this next phase, I'm going to need all of you. Yes, I'm the Attorney General, but I still live in the neighborhood, and I'm not going to compromise my values. I haven't changed at all. I've sort of transformed the office of I've transformed the office of the Attorney General to join with other like-minded attorneys general all across this nation to fight back against what is happening in Washington, D.C. But I'm still Tish, and my values haven't changed. And so we've got to stay together. We've got to come back together because there is a new construction firm, new development plan for the rail yards which remain fallow. Remember the rail yards that were blighted? Yeah, those. And so the plan is to build over the rail yards. And so we've got to come together to make sure that they build it right and they build it truly for individuals who need affordable housing, workforce housing, housing for women and children, housing for individuals who are homeless, housing for individuals who are victims of domestic violence, housing for individuals who are living in our shelters right now. Housing. That's what we need. No more hamburger franchises. No more failing basketball teams. It's time that we meet the needs of the community, of the people. And that's what I'm prepared to do. And I know you're going to see this movie, and there are a lot of individuals in this movie, but there are so many unsung heroes. People who held signs, who did petitions, who marched with us. They're nameless and they're faceless, but they too care about this community. And so I'm glad all of you are here today, but I still need you in this struggle. I need you in this struggle, one, to defend our democracy, and I need you in the struggle, again, to defend and protect this community, and to stand together as one, because right now, all that we have is each other. And the President of the United States is not as powerful as you may think. The reality is that the power really lies in our hands, And the question that I pose to each and every one of you is, what are you going to do with the power that's in your hands? And I say, stand up and fight back. Develop, don't destroy. Thank you.
Yeah, come on. Thank you. Thank you, New York State Attorney James, and a special thanks to Pioneer Works AV, production, visitor engagement, facilities, and development teams for their support, and all the volunteers and activists that helped make tonight possible. And I wanted special thanks to the Develop, Don't Destroy group, who really met with me on Zoom calls, thought about what we wanted for this night, and made sure that it happened. So we, just like Tish said, when we want to do something, we can do it, because we did this. So thank you, and here's the movie.